Hi there, and welcome. In the next few minutes, we are going to talk about something called the Mandatory Settlement Conference, or MSC for short. My name is Marty, and I'm here to help explain how the MSC works and how it can help people settle disagreements during an eviction. If you can, now might be a good time to grab a pen and paper to take some notes. Meet Lana the landlord and Terry the tenant. Lana has just given Terry a 60-day notice to move out because she wants her elderly mother to live in the house. But Terry doesn't agree with the notice and is fighting the eviction. Both Lana and Terry feel that they are right. They're upset and have stopped talking to each other. Lana worries that a judge could say her notice isn't valid, which means she might have to start the case all over again. Terry is also worried because he needs more time to find a new place to live. But don't worry, Marty the Housing Settlement Master is here to help. As a Housing Settlement Master, my job is to help both Lana and Terry talk things through and find a solution that works for both of them without needing to go to court. The Mandatory Settlement Conference is a meeting where both sides are encouraged to work together to solve their problems. During the MSC, everyone works together to solve the issues without needing a judge to decide. This saves time, money, and stress. It also helps people stay respectful towards each other and might even help improve their relationship. The Mandatory Settlement Conference allows both sides to have more control over what happens in the case instead of leaving it up to the judge. The settlement terms can be whatever Lana and Terry agree on together. During the MSC, both tenants and landlords can ask for different things as part of the settlement. Here are a few things that they might talk about. Keep in mind, these examples might not work for every case. They might talk about masking the case. This means that the parties ask for the case to be kept private so that future landlords and creditors can't see it. The tenant may want to keep the eviction hidden from public records in order to protect their rental history. The landlord may agree to keep the case private unless the tenant doesn't follow the terms of the agreement. If that happens, the case might become public. The court judgment is the court's final decision that both parties must follow. A judgment can be about money or the right to take back the property and is entered into the record, which may or may not be viewable to the public. The tenant might ask the court to hold off on making a final ruling. Instead, they could ask the landlord to agree to drop or dismiss the case once the tenant moves out. The landlord might want the court to make a final ruling now. The landlord might agree to wait on enforcing the judgment if the tenant follows the agreement. Back rent is the term used to talk about any rent that has not been paid by the tenant. The tenant may ask for any back rent or fees to be waived if they leave by a certain date. The landlord may want the tenant to pay all the unpaid rent and fees, no matter what. What happens if one side doesn't follow the agreement? The tenant might ask the landlord to give written notice and schedule a hearing before starting the lockout process if they break the terms of the agreement. The landlord may want to go straight to the lockout process if the tenant doesn't follow the deal without needing a hearing. Case dismissal is what happens to the case after the agreement is made. The tenant might want the case dismissed for good so that the landlord can't refile the same claim. The landlord may want the case dismissed without prejudice, which means they can refile the case if needed. The parties might talk about relocation expenses. The tenant may ask for the landlord to help with moving costs. The landlord may not want to pay any moving costs for the tenant. The tenant may agree to leave the place clean and avoid causing further damage. The landlord may want the right to throw out anything the tenant leaves behind after they move out and ask the tenant not to talk to other tenants. Both sides might agree to pay their own costs and fees. Whatever agreement Lana and Terry choose during the mandatory settlement conference, it is enforceable. This means that once they agree and sign the agreement, neither Lana nor Terry can later change their minds. The agreement must be followed as decided. These are just a few examples of what might be discussed during the MSC. The final agreement will depend on your case and what both sides want. The MSC can happen in person or online, depending on how your court handles things. Sometimes the two parties will talk together, and sometimes they will talk separately. In this case, I helped Lana and Terry agree on a move-out date for Terry in 3 months, with a neutral reference from Lana for Terry's next rental. This kind of agreement helps both sides. It saves them from the stress and costs of going to court. The MSC can also help landlords and tenants by fixing problems, keeping their records clean, and lowering stress. It's a good way to avoid going to trial. If the two sides agree, your housing settlement master will help write up the agreement, and it will be sent to the court instead of going to trial. A judge will sign the agreement, making sure that it's legally binding. Remember, once both parties agree and sign the agreement during the MSC, it is enforceable. This means that neither Lana nor Terry can later change their mind about the terms of the agreement. But what if Lana and Terry can't come to an agreement? In that case, they will need to go to trial. Each of them will need to prepare their evidence and the names of possible witnesses and share it with the other side at least 5 days before the trial. At trial, the judge will decide whether Terry must leave the home or if one side owes money to the other. Remember, during the MSC, you may be able to settle issues that the judge won't decide on at trial. For example, keeping the case private, getting a neutral reference from the landlord, or choosing a flexible move-out date. That's the end of our exploration of the Mandatory Settlement Conference. Don't worry if you still feel nervous. Your settlement master will be there to help you every step of the way. Thank you for joining us.